everyone. I'm Jennifer Whitaker, trauma specialist, and today I'm going to talk about the connections between childhood trauma, memory, and the stories we tell ourselves. So I'm going to help explain why sometimes we or other people tell ourselves stories that aren't necessarily true, and yet we believe them. What's that about? So let's start to dive in. Like I said, I'm Jennifer Whitaker, trauma specialist. Welcome back. I'm honored that you're here again. And if you're new, welcome to the community. Please like, subscribe, share, and be sure to hit that bell on YouTube so you don't miss further videos. So I'm going to start by talking about memory. And it's going to be important to understand the differences between implicit and explicit memory in order to understand this concept. So I'm going to jump in with explicit memory. Explicit memories are produced primarily by the hippocampus, which is a structure in the center part of the brain. So explicit memories are produced by the hippocampus and the frontal lobes. The hippocampus helps put explicit memories in proper perspective and place in our life's timeline. It's how we make sense of what happened in our life. Due to brain plasticity, excuse my tongue tie there, the structure of the hippocampus can change in response to life's experiences. So a particularly interesting example that illustrates this is a study that was done on London taxi drivers found that the area of the hippocampus responsible for spatial memory was larger the longer they spent driving taxis, which I find fascinating about the plasticity of the brain. It can actually make certain structures larger or even smaller. Stress seems to have a negative effect on the functioning and structure of the hippocampus. It has been found that when the amygdala is highly active, and I'm going to stick a pin in this for a second because the amygdala being highly active circles back to a video that I did a few months ago called The Hand Model by Dan Siegel, whenever we flip our lid and we have that amygdala hijack. So if you missed that and you're not certain of what I mean here, circle back and watch that video. Okay, so let's jump back in. It's been found that when the amygdala is highly active, the stress hormones that are released in the body, like cortisol, for example, interfere with the proper functioning of the hippocampus. And this interference may result in traumatic and highly stressful experiences not being explicitly remembered or being remembered only in fragments. And likewise, prolonged exposure to high levels of cortisol can result in significant hippocampal damage. Now, implicit memory, on the other hand, is a whole different beast. Implicit memory develops before birth. When we are born, only about 25% of our brain is developed. So we have no access to explicit memories until about 2 years of age, give or take. This is going to vary from individual to individual. The only form of memory we have online at birth and even before birth is our implicit memory. Implicit memory is why nonverbal communication is just as, or perhaps even more important when it comes to effective communication with other humans. So it's important to remember that implicit memory develops before birth. External cues or internal cues can trigger implicit memories seemingly out of the blue or from nowhere. Implicit memories include body memories such as sensation, emotion, or knee-jerk reactions, which are those behaviors we're not always so proud of. And implicit memories can be positive or negative. So a little bit more about implicit memory. Implicit memory is the unconscious retention of information. Implicit memories often involve information that is processed or accessed without our intention. Different from explicit memories, language is not required for the storage or the retrieval of implicit memories. Instead, they involve automatic procedures and internal states. Thus, the original use of the term procedural memory when referring to implicit memories. In other words, procedural memory and implicit memory is synonymous or interchangeable. Also different from explicit memory, implicit or procedural memory does not have a sense of linear time, a sense of space, and there is no sense of self. Instead, implicit or procedural memories are often memories of skills and conditioned associations unattached from the context in which they were learned. As such, implicit memories can be formed from experiences that entail somatic, sensory, motor, and emotional elements without our conscious awareness of ever forming them. And implicit memories can be triggered without conscious awareness and experienced in the body as if they're happening right now in the present moment. So let me give you an example to illustrate the differences between explicit and implicit memory. If you know how to ride a bike, do you remember the day that you first learned how to ride a bike? You may remember what the weather was like. Was it sunny? Was it cloudy? Was it sprinkling? Where were you? Were you in the driveway? Were you in the cul-de-sac? Were you at a park or on the beach? What color was your bike? Did you have a basket? Did you have a bell? Did you have training wheels? How many times did you fall and scrape your knee? These are all explicit memories because explicit memory is memory recall. However, staying balanced, pedaling, and using the handlebars to steer, these are all implicit memories. You access these skills every time you get on a bicycle. So if you remember how to ride a bicycle, that's implicit memory, even though you might not remember the details of the day you learned, which is explicit memory. If I ask you to tell me about the last time you rode a bike, that's a story. You're going to tell me a story about the most recent time. You would be accessing explicit memories to do so. If I were to hand you a bicycle right now and you got on it and rode down the street, you would be accessing implicit memories to do so. And this illustrates an important principle about memory as it relates to trauma. Implicit memories and explicit memories don't always accompany each other. They can be completely separate. When we have had trauma, we may not have an explicit memory around an event, even though the implicit memory around what happened is well intact. Our body may react with a multisensory experience of implicit memories, and we might have no clue why it's happening. And that's where the narratives or the stories we tell ourselves sometimes originate and come into play. And that's because the mind, the conscious mind, is a meaning-making machine. And it has a tendency to make up a story to explain and justify the uncomfortable sensations, the heavy emotions, the automatic knee-jerk reactions that happen when traumatic implicit memories are triggered. Now, how do these implicit memories get triggered? Cues from the environment can trigger implicit memories. A cue could be an external reminder, such as a certain person, a particular place, a sight, a sound, or a smell. Or a cue could be an internal reminder, such as a bodily sensation, an emotion, or even a physical symptom, such as a headache, muscle tension, or an upset stomach. Implicit memories include body memories, such as sensations, emotions, and knee-jerk reactions, those behaviors that I talked about before that don't make us feel so proud, and sometimes we regret what we say or do when we're being reactionary. Implicit memories can be positive or negative, so they're not all bad, but the ones that cause shame, guilt, regret, the quote bad ones, those are the ones that tend to cause problems in our lives. So let me give you an example of how an implicit memory can suddenly get triggered. Let's say you're enjoying a day out with your family, and let's pretend, it's time to start school. So you're out school shopping and you're actually happy. You're enjoying the day. You're at the mall. You're having a great time. And then all of a sudden you walk past a Cinnabon store, and all of a sudden you notice that you're angry, you're anxious, and you just want to get the hell out of there. It feels like a Jekyll and Hyde moment, and you don't know why. All you know is that you're upset suddenly and you need to leave. An implicit memory was triggered with no explicit memory recall of the original event. So perhaps, let's say when you were a child, maybe 3 or 4 years old, maybe there was an instance where your mom was baking cinnamon bread in the kitchen when your dad had a rageful outburst and the whole family was terrified at what was happening. They were scared. Your body remembers how you felt in the moment. And because you don't have explicit memory or memory recall around why you feel this way, you decide to tell yourself the story that you hate being at the mall and spending time with your family. So the next time they ask you to go somewhere, you back out and you don't go. You've just created a narrative, and that's the story you tell yourself. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So the reason that I share this is because it is so important to remember some of the stories that we tell ourselves and some of the things that we avoid in the present moment could be the result of not understanding implicit memories. And when we don't understand them, we don't know how to address them. So if you notice that you have reactionary behaviors and you think that there might be some implicit memories at play, I highly recommend finding a therapist who is skilled at bottom-up techniques, therapists who work with the physiology of trauma. Look for a somatic experiencing practitioner, a compassionate inquiry practitioner, an internal family systems practitioner, a sensory motor psychotherapy practitioner. And that's just to name a few. So I hope you have found this information helpful. And if you recognize it in yourself, look up some of those modalities, go to their websites, because almost all of them, I think all of them do have Find a Therapist links. All right. I'll see you next time, everyone. Happy self-discovery.